Today, I'm going to demonstrate how to set up a meter sensor on a digital type meter, sometimes referred to as a smart meter. I suggest watching the video entirely, then go and set up your meter sensor on your electricity meter after. You may want to take a picture of your meter before watching the full video to be able to identify your meter to the meters in the video. Before we get into setting up a meter sensor, let me explain how the meter sensor works with a digital meter. On any digital or smart meter that is compatible with our meter sensor, there is an active infrared LED or port that emits an infrared flash, or watt pulse as we call it, that the meter sensor detects to calculate a consumption value. The infrared LED or port is generally located on the face of the meter, except for Itron meters, where the infrared port is on the top of the meter. The watt pulse emitted from the infrared port is picked up by the dark LED on the underside of the sensor head, then transmitted to the cloud connector, which calculates the consumption value. Before we install the meter sensor on a meter, there is a bit of assembly required. We have to install the sensor head bracket into the sensor bracket, then install the band clamp that will hold the sensor onto the electricity meter. If you are installing the meter sensor on a top port Itron meter, you do not need the sensor head bracket. Instead, you'll be mounting the sensor head directly in the sensor bracket. For all other digital meters, you'll be installing the sensor head bracket on either the left or the right side of the bracket. As a general rule, if your meter infrared port is on the left side of the meter, mount the bracket on the left slot. If the infrared port is on the right side of your meter, mount the bracket in the right slot. If your meter port is in the center, such as on this Icon meter, mount the bracket in either slot. Ultimately, it's best to have the sensor battery facing upwards. After you install the sensor head bracket, thread the band clamp through the sensor bracket. Thread about 1 to 2 inches of the clamp into the adjuster as a starting point and tighten it fully after it's on the meter. We are first going to install the meter sensor on this Icon digital meter with the active port on the face of the meter, then on a top port Itron meter with the active port on top. The video will then go into a slideshow of the various digital meters and how the sensor mounts on each meter. If you don't see your specific digital meter in the slideshow, you ultimately want the dark LED on the underside of the meter sensor head to be positioned over the active infrared port on your meter. Let's get started. I have the sensor head bracket installed into the bracket, and my band clamp is installed. Next, I'm going to slide the full sensor bracket onto the meter. The infrared port should be in the center of the fork. This will be the case for any front port digital meter. Leave about 3/4 of an inch between the face of the meter and the sensor head bracket, so that there will be enough room for the sensor head. Ultimately, you want the sensor head to touch the meter face if possible to eliminate water droplets under the sensor head that will affect detection. Tighten the band clamp when you have your bracket lined up. Now I'm going to install the sensor into the bracket. Next, I'm going to loosen the sensor head lock nut and slide the sensor head into the bracket. Then, I'm going to line up the sensor head so that the wire on the sensor head lines up with the infrared port, then tighten the lock nut. After everything is installed and aligned on the meter, momentarily break the battery connection on the sensor. Now we are going to observe the status light on the sensor to determine if we have a good meter detection. After breaking the battery connection, the status light should come on green, which is the battery condition. Then solid red, eventually changing to flashing red. Then finally, a triple blink of green indicating excellent meter detection. If the sensor status light never changes from solid red to flashing red, readjust the sensor head, then break the battery connection on the sensor to reinitiate meter detection. It is best if you have a high load on your meter at this time to speed up detection. A good high load is a clothes dryer or other high wattage appliance, such as an oven or kettle filled with cold water. Stovetop burners are not recommended, as you will have to leave them unattended while you are at your meter. You only need the high load for several minutes while you are setting up the meter sensor on your meter. Don't forget to turn off the appliance after you are finished at the meter. Now I'm going to show you how to set up a meter sensor on a top port Itron meter. I have my sensor bracket all ready. I have my band clamp in, and for this meter, you do not need the sensor head bracket. Now we are going to line up the hole in the sensor bracket directly over top of the infrared LED port, then tighten down the band clamp. Now I'm installing the sensor in the bracket. Then I'm going to loosen the lock nut on the sensor head and slide the sensor head into the bracket with the white index mark facing right, then snug the lock nut. Now you can initiate meter detection by breaking the battery connection momentarily. After the sensor reboots, the status light should come on green, which is the battery condition. Then solid red, eventually changing to flashing red. Then finally, a triple blink of green, indicating excellent meter detection. If the sensor status light never changes from solid red to flashing red, readjust the sensor bracket, then break the battery connection again to reinitiate meter detection. Now let's move into a slideshow of the most common meters and how the meter sensor installs on each one. It's best if you have a picture of your meter available to compare with the meters in this video. I also recommend that you pause the video at any time if you need more time to study any of the images. If you need to find the sensor installation instructions, log in to your Energy Cloud account, then click on Settings, then on Setup Sensor. For more information about our products, visit us on the web at www.bluelineinnovations.com. Energy Cloud. Know your power. Save your money.